You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes. So, Liam, I've been going over our analytics, and it looks like one of our most popular movies last quarter was the holiday rom-com. Should we make another one?
No.
Why?
Because we should make another 1,000.
I have some notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, the movie podcast with cuts, keeps, punch-ups, and tweaks on mediocre movies. I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver.
And today we are discussing a Hallmark Christmas movie.
Yes.
Each.
Yes.
Happy holidays, fellas. Tis the season. Are you riddled with Christmas cheer?
No. Definitely not. Not after this episode. But also, at work is extremely busy during the holiday season. And my daughter has also been sick the last couple nights, and I'm running on not a lot of sleep and a whole lot of exhaustion.
Yeah, my work's pretty busy too with Black Friday stuff. We're recording this on American Thanksgiving Thursday.
Yeah. I don't have to worry about any sort of retail stuff. Thank goodness. I've finally reached that point in my professional career. But I will say I do get in the Christmas spirit. I like Christmas, but it's still a bit early for it to have kicked in at time of recording. So,
How many have their tree up?
Oh, not yet.
Oh, we put ours up last weekend. We're ahead of the game, baby.
Yeah, probably this weekend. We usually wait till the first weekend of December.
Yeah, seems likely. Well, I as Greg mentioned, maybe not full of Christmas cheer because of the film, or should I say films, we watched for today's episode. We are doing a Hallmark Christmas movie. Which one? Yes. So the where this came about, the premise of today's episode is every December, we consider doing a Hallmark Christmas movie when we're talking about the holiday episode we're going to do. And every December, we decide not to. And that's mostly because there isn't really one Hallmark Christmas movie or even Hallmark type Christmas movie that everyone has seen. So finding a movie that our listeners would connect with, that the algorithm would appreciate, that anyone cares to hear our thoughts about was really tough. But also every time we talk about Christmas movies, the Hallmark Christmas movie is looming large over I Have Some Notes because it's the perfect thing for us to do our Armchair Screenwriter shtick on. So this year we conceived of a way to get away with doing, and I have some notes on the Hallmark Christmas formula without having to pick a single movie. If these movies really are all the same formula repeated over and over, then it shouldn't matter which one we watch. So we each watched a different one and we'll be comparing notes and seeing if those notes apply to the others. So with that all being said, what are your guys' experiences with Hallmark movies or, inoffensive Christmas rom-coms in general before this week?
I mean, I've definitely seen some Christmas rom-coms, and Anita in particular is a big fan of the rom-com, but Hallmark Christmas movies specifically have kind of passed us by, partly because we're aware that they're allegedly formulaic and middling at best, so we don't generally watch them. There's other better rom-coms that we generally tune into. So this is definitely Christmas my movies. First experience with a Hallmark TM branded Christmas movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean they're not first on my list. We usually watch. I think the closest we get is Hallmark adjacent movies for bad movie night. But those are usually of the Christian production company variety, just because there's a hubris and sincerity to those that makes it kind of a little bit more of a perfect bad movie night type experience. I would say that the Hallmark brand is so mid that it doesn't really garner any interest either way from me, either on like I want to watch something to turn off my brain. It doesn't interest me enough that way, and it definitely does, and it doesn't interest me enough in a I want to watch a bad movie kind of way.
Question for you, because you mentioned that a lot of your like bad holiday movie experience was with the more kind of religiously focused ones. My Hallmark movie in particular, at risk of tiptoeing into us discussing the movies, was very secular. Like it was very rah Christmas, no mention of Jesus. Was that
same.
the case with both of yours too?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much so.
All right.
Amanda even pointed it out. Like this is more about the concept of Christmas than any kind of, religious practice.
Yeah.
I suppose it makes a lot of sense given the experience of the company producing these movies, because they're a greeting card company. And in order to sell the most cards, I'm sure there's an edict somewhere to have cards that appeal to the most people possible, right? So I'm sure that they've translated that into their movies as well.
The most inoffensive secular take on Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, I can handwrite Jesus is Lord into a Season's Greeting Christmas card, but it's less smooth to write Season's Greeting into a Jesus is Lord Christmas card.
Yeah.
This was my absolute first time with one of these and hopefully the last, cause it really, like you said, Greg, it's not so bad it's good, or so good it's good, or so thoughtless it's good. It's just like the Sears Christmas wish book slideshow.
Yeah. What a great way of describing it.
Toast. It's the buttered toast of movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then with that, let's go to the plot summary.
These two co-workers share a past.
College was a long time ago.
Doesn't matter what happened back then.
Now,
You're firing me a week before Christmas.
and when the going gets tough,
You just gotta refit up.
love becomes breaking news.
Maybe I'll find my Christmas spirit.
Lori Loughlin, Danica McKellar, Brooke Nevin, Michael Cassidy, crowned for Christmas. Every Christmas has a story. Jingle Around the Clock on Hallmark Channel. The heart of Christmas.
An attractive white woman experiences a stressful change in her professional life during the holiday season. This challenging new situation introduces her to an attractive white man with whom she must now work in close proximity. Through a series of Christmas-themed activities and discussions about what makes the season so special, a romance blossoms between them. Some minor friction is easily overcome with the help of pleasant, understanding friends and family. Everything culminates in a demonstration of their new romantic relationship in front of a bright holiday backdrop.
That sums up all three films.
Pretty much.
So, but let's get into which specific ones we watched. Give them a little more credit. So Greg, start us off.
Yeah, I watched Crown for Christmas. This is a 2015 TV movie. Are all Hallmark movies considered TV movies?
I believe so. My understanding is that there is a Hallmark channel in American cable packages that these would get released onto.
Yeah.
And then in the recently there is a Hallmark streaming service, I think.
Yeah.
Ours definitely had commercial breaks.
Yeah.
Built into it.
Like yes, ours did too. The writing credits, like at the beginning of the movie also came up as teleplay, which is generally obviously not used for feature films. So yeah, on
IMDb, it's written as teleplay as well. I just wrote written by when I was putting the show notes together, but yeah, there's a bunch of teleplay. So yeah. It's a,
Anyway, it was directed by Alex Zam. We all know the Zam, and written by Janine Damian, Michael Damian, Neil H. Dabrowski, and Tippy Dabrowski.
Tippy Dabrowski is a great name.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that for
awesome.
like a D&D NPC.
Nice. A cursory glance through the writer's IMDb would not surprise you. It's full of Christmas movies and Hallmark adjacent type romance movies. So they're well into the Hallmark factory producing this stuff. So, I mean, it's a good job if you can get it. I mean, you're working all the time.
Yeah.
So nothing wrong with that. It stars Danica McKellar, Winnie from, I was going to say Facts of Life. That's not it. What's it called? Wonder Years. That's where she's from. Yeah. And Rupert Penry, is the male lead. And, I think he apparently was in the Batman briefly. He was like the mayor. Other than that, he's done a bunch of television stuff. Anyway, I don't know if anybody cares about those people, but maybe Danica McKellar a little bit. But the plot is, according to Hallmark itself, after getting fired from her job as a maid at the ritzy New York City hotel, Allie reluctantly accepts a temp gig as the governess to a young girl who is part of a powerful family in Europe that lives in an actual castle. After arriving, Allie learns the girl is named Princess Theodora, and her father is Maximilian, the King of Windshire. The king informs Allie that the princess has a tendency to terrorize authority figures, a predilection that has grown worse since her mother's death. Yet the governess and princess wind up hitting it off, and at the same time, sparks form between Allie and Max. However, the Countess Celia is expected to wed the king. Will Max stand up for his feelings for Allie and make it truly a Merry Christmas for all? Or at least most? Question mark.
Isn't this the plot of The King and I?
I haven't seen The King of Lies, so
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I also haven't seen it, but that seems likely.
That feels like The King and I. All right. Well, I watched Every Christmas Has a Story from 2016, directed by Ron Oliver. Good old Ron Ollie. Written by Andrea King, Ron Oliver himself, and David Golden. It stars TV's Aunt Becky, Lori Loughlin, as Kate Harper, and Eureka's sheriff, Colin Ferguson, as Jack Brewster. The plot summary, according to Hallmark: when a TV personality has an on-air snafu and admits she hates Christmas, she's invited to the most Christmassy town in the U.S. to try and repair her image. Forced to work with her ex-boyfriend Jack, the show's producer, the magic of Christmas in this special town will change the way she views Christmas and her life, and maybe a little romance on the side.
hey, I bet Lori Loughlin knows a little bit of something about trying to repair your image, right?
Yeah.
After that college scandal and all.
Fun fact, her daughter is a character in the movie. And I have to believe that was not because her daughter necessarily was the best for the part. Though she is adorable and the character is fun. I will grant that.
Well, I watched Jingle Around the Clock from 2018, directed by Paul Ziller, written by Joey Botkin and Zach Hugg. Another great name, Zach Hugg. It stars Brooke Nevin as Elle and Michael Cassidy as Max, and I cannot believe, not even through the credits, both the leads in Greg's movie and my movie are named Max. And then Jack, which is another sound.
Yeah. And mine's Allie and yours is Ellie, right?
Ellie, yeah.
Mine is
I think
Kate.
mine's just, it's Ellie. Yeah, it is Ellie. Yeah. It's spelled E-L-L-E, which sometimes can be L, but... So according to Hallmark, when Ellie Bennett decides to reunite her college friends for a special Christmas celebration, her plans are thwarted by an opportunity at work she can't pass up. Spearheading a Christmas campaign relaunch to prove she's ready for a career-altering promotion. Much to her surprise, she's forced to team up with advertising campaign fixer Max, who has a completely different take on the holidays. But as Ellie and Max work together to learn more about each other's Christmas traditions, they unexpectedly find themselves falling for each other. With the help of a little Christmas magic, will Ellie pull off the perfect Christmas reunion and find the love she's been searching for?
I'm going to go with yes.
So yeah, right out of the gate, I guess, how did you feel about the movie you watched? What was your overall review of this movie? Brackets.
Well, I think I was about 15 minutes in and cursing Liam's name a little bit. Cause I think I wrote in the recording chat that, I wanted to die. the opening few scenes were extremely brutal from both a writing and acting perspective, and I was like, oh boy, if this is the whole movie, I am going to be checking out and looking at my phone for a lot of it. To my surprise, after we got through the opening sort of exposition and the characters move on to the actual meat of the plot when kind of McKellar gets to the castle and stuff like that, it starts to take a turn, and I think it's like her friends back in New York were the poor performers, and everyone at the castle is much better, and so the movie itself gets watchable in the kind of sense of the word. Like, I actually found that it was so how do I put this? It wasn't good, but
palatable.
But it hit all the right beats, and it did all the small things well enough that we kind of there was a portion of the movie where Aaron and I stopped riffing on it and making fun of it, and we're just watching it, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I did not expect that. So it like, I think there's something about romance plots that are so relatable that even if you're really not super into it, like, you're kind of like, a part of you is like, I hope these two kids get together. Everyone just likes to see that.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned the rough acting going into good acting. I had a similar experience. The first couple scenes is a bunch of exposition dumped by people with either no acting chops or only allowed to give it one take.
Yeah.
Just really stiff, really like tell, don't show exposition dumping. But then once it's down to just the two leads, it's wild how much the two main actors were leaps and bounds better actors than everyone else, and were making a meal of their dialogue. Like, I'll genuinely say it, the woman who led Jingle Around the Clock, Brooke Nevin, crushed it. She was very watchable. Like, she's just like a good actor. She took some of the cringiest, impotent, do nothing dialogue and sold it like a person talking in that position. It was, she was a joy to watch.
Yeah, Nita and I found a lot of the dialogue in Every Christmas Has a Story very, very bad. You may have heard Nita chime in the background. She's behind me. It was like the script needed a lot of punch up. But I mean, Lori Loughlin's pretty good actor, and Colin Ferguson is a really good actor. We were surprised, and I'm legit surprised he doesn't get more handsome leading man roles, because he did it. Like, he was on point. He's very handsome. He had a lot of like natural charm. And I'm like, I'm falling in love with this guy. So I totally see why like Lori Loughlin is like, I thought the two leads were pretty good, but you are absolutely right. The rest of the cast in Every Christmas Has a Story was noticeably weaker than them. And I feel like that's not necessarily the actor's fault. I feel like they're being let down by a mediocre script, very rushed TV directing. And not having the chance to do another couple takes or another run at something. I felt in every way this movie could have been better, and that's because I feel like there's the kernel of some good ideas here, and there's like 3 subplots in Every Christmas Has a Story that dovetail together really nicely. They just aren't written very well. Which is a shame, because again, I feel like there was a good idea here that just didn't quite get executed very well.
It's interesting you mentioned the sort of like the bad writing. There was a turn of phrase you used a second ago, and I forget what it was, so hopefully it'll come back to me when I describe it. But something Amanda and I observed, we usually watch Oh, punch up. You said it needed to be punched up or
Yeah.
like maybe made a little more interesting and flowery or just fun to listen to.
Yeah.
But I actually don't think that was like a skill issue. I actually think it's deliberate because Amanda and I usually watch movies with subtitles on. She just likes it to pick up the dialogue. I also wear headphones all the time and probably have way more hearing loss for a 37-year-old than I should. So we usually do subtitles. We just didn't bother to put them on. And we were 20 minutes in. We were like, not only do we forgot about the subtitles, we don't need them. We can hear everything they're saying crystal clear. It is both delivered succinctly and clearly and written in a very unambiguous, no subtext, no very little dramatic irony. And I think it's meant for like grandmas who can't keep up to be able to keep up.
You know what?
And so
that could be it. That could be what it is.
The reason there's clunky exposition dumps full of telling, not showing is because for the same reason that like Elmo points to the number 2, you know, like it's a 2, like you have to make sure everyone's picking up what you're putting down. And that includes little children and grandmas who are all watching family Christmas
This is
movie.
a Hallmark Christmas movie. We don't have time for subtlety.
Yeah. Subtlety. That's
Yeah.
Nothing is subtle. And I think that's a feature, not a bug.
I have to imagine that if you're putting these on regularly during Christmas, it has kind of the same effect as a beloved TV show that you've seen many, many times over, and you don't really need to pay attention to it to understand what's going on, and it's kind of comforting in that way and
they're so interchangeable as well.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So it doesn't matter which one you're watching, you know what all the plot beats are, you know what generally the characters are saying to one another.
Yeah, so you could be in the kitchen doing some cooking, you might miss a couple things, but it really doesn't matter because you're still on board with what's happening.
Yeah, very true. You guys were overall on board for your 2 leads. Like we were all saying they were good actors.
Yeah, I think they did a great job.
I just got to highlight Michael Cassidy as Max in Jingle Around the Clock. He looks a lot like Paul Rudd, and I think he knows it because his delivery was also very Rudd-esque. He's like taller and skinnier and like doesn't have the kind of like wavy hair, but his like grin and his just general face structure was giving Paul Rudd in a way that like this guy's leaning into it. This guy
knows what he's about.
Yeah. So, but if he was Wish.com Paul Rudd, I would not say the same about the lead in my movie. Where would it go? Brooke Nevin. This is how I would describe Brooke Nevin. She's a gorgeous woman, very beautiful, nice to look at through the whole movie. But definitely like our age or older. If Brooke Nevin took the substance, Sydney Sweeney would crawl out of her spine. The same kind of like smile, like there's just this like smile, the same kind of like big eyes. And it was like watching, Paul Rudd and Sydney Sweeney in a rom-com, but they were nowhere to be found. Were there any like any actors in your films that you're like, oh, they're trying to do this? But you guys both kind of had semi-famous ones. You had Full House alumni,
I Wonder Years alumni.
I'm confusing it with one of the ones I almost picked. There's one where the older sister from Full House it's called Switched at Christmas.
Yes, we almost watched that one as well.
Yeah, and she's been in a couple of them. So I looked at some of the IMDb stuff for some of the other actors. They've done other stuff. But mostly TV and or other Hallmark Christmas movies or Hallmark adjacent Christmas movies. Like this seems like the kind of thing that a lot of actors accidentally maybe fall into and become like Hallmark lifers.
I forget where I had heard it, like in the last month or so, a podcast talking about they were talking about Hallmark Christmas movies. It was a podcast where they were discussing Hallmark Christmas movies. I think it was a 99% Invisible episode recently. And apparently a lot of child actors end up in this because they're used to the workaday, like,
oh yeah,
being a working actor, but they don't have like the fame of a famous adult, but they have some people like recognizable a brand identity, and it's usually because their child actors probably did something wholesome, like they're the kid from the sitcom, not the kid from the horror movie.
Yeah.
And that all just kind of builds into the brand. But yeah, there was a recent 99 PI about this, and
that tracks to me. That makes sense. And you know what? No shade on them. It's work, right? It's regular work. And that's a lot more than a lot of actors can say.
Yeah. The Niven, the woman in my movie, has been in like 7 or 8 Christmas movies for Hallmark. Like,
sure. Yeah. Looking at Craig, I said I'm surprised Craig Ferguson hasn't been like handsome leading man in more stuff, but the truth is he has been a handsome leading man in a number of Hallmark movies. So
Colin Ferguson also.
Yeah,
Craig Ferguson wouldn't be seen.
That would be amazing.
Vital to this.
I'll take that. You're right.
How did you guys feel about the production?
I just corrected you. It's fine. Just like last week when you guys pointed out, I said McCoy instead of Scotty like 5 times in Star Trek. So, yeah.
How did you feel about the production value of your particular movie?
Very made for TV.
Oh, you can tell there was like a shoestring budget because. So sometimes it was creative. Sometimes the way they got around the budget was, I was like, okay, that's some Evil Dead kind of like ingenuity. So there was a bunch of scenes set at a Christmas craft fair. So all they had to get were those like 4-legged 10x10 tents, put a bunch of Christmas bullshit in it, fill the rest with trees, and they could turn a parking lot into a full Christmas wonderland on a dime. Or on a budget, which is great. But then other times it was very frustrating. So there's a plot point in Jingle Around the Clock where it's foreshadowed that the company Christmas party is taking place in a building across the street. And on the top floor, there's a beautiful atrium. Ooh, what a beautiful atrium there is. What a great place for a Christmas party. And then at the end of the movie, ooh, she's just so busy. She's not going to be able to make her friend's Christmas party, let alone the company Christmas party. So the friends come to the company Christmas party, but instead of just mingling with the coworkers, they get the atrium. She's like, oh, great. So Christmas party downstairs, atrium, friend Christmas upstairs. And then we go upstairs and we never see the atrium. It's just the like foyer in front of it.
Well, they didn't
and I'm
pay
like,
for the
at least we end on a big, beautiful set piece. We're going to see this lovely atrium. And it's like, nope, it's a wall. It's like a sparkly wall.
Yeah. In our case, most of the film takes place in Hollyvale, the most Christmassy town in the U.S., and it's mostly just set on like Hollyvale's main street. You don't really see much of the town, and it's like okay, because they rented like one street of a town for like a few days of filming and dressed it up to look like Christmas. Though I will say it did give me like Jasper vibes, like small mountain town.
Oh yeah.
Winter touristy kind of vibe. So it did work for it, but it was very clearly like kind of bare minimum TV budget sort of stuff.
What prompted that question, Greg?
Well, I feel like I may have got the movie that had the largest budget. And I say that because, you know, the movie's about a king and they did shoot at an actual castle that was, you know, ornately furnished and very much looked the part. Like the, you know, the stuff they shot in New York, like there's in the opening scene, like the Danica McKellar's she's a maid in a hotel and they're very clearly, shooting very quickly in a hotel that they got permission to shoot in because the lighting is terrible and this and that. But once they get to the castle, like, it looks pretty good and there's a lot of production value in it. And, it was also clear that, they were only allowed to shoot at the castle for a certain period of time, because there is a scene where, they must have missed some reaction shots from Danica McKellar because she's in her room and talking to I can't remember, it was like one of the house leading
groundskeeper.
No, it's more like she's like in charge of all like the chef and like that kind of stuff. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're having a conversation and they cut to Danica McKellar, and she is very clearly not in that castle at all. It is a really rough JPEG behind her, poorly green screened, and I was killing myself laughing.
Incredible. So, Scott, if I understand correctly, the film you watched was about a TV personality.
Yep.
Like a TV news anchor or something like that.
She hosts a morning show on a big network.
Right. Mine was about an advertising executive. That's actually why I picked this one, because it was like, she's an advertising person and meets Max, who has a different idea about Christmas. And I was like, oh, I went to business school. I liked Mad Men. And this guy sounds like maybe he's a Grinch who'll grow a little. I'm like, maybe I'll relate to this guy. But he doesn't have any hot takes on Christmas. He's as Christmassy as the rest of them. But all this to say, I got to ask, and then Greg, yours was about royalty and kings and shit. The profession in which your characters operate, how was that presented? Because I'll explain why I ask. In Jingle Around the Clock, their portrayal of what advertisers, marketing people do all day, like a marketing firm does all day, was laughable. It reminds me of the episode of Rick and Morty where the dad gets Jerry gets mind controlled by some aliens, and he thinks he's working at an advertising agency, and he just pitches got apples, and they all clap and lose their mind. And that's what this was. This was she I can't even begin to describe how they put together a video upload website for people to share recipes that they love on a cookware website in 2 days. So in 2 days, they launch a video streaming website that gets thousands of people uploading full cooking videos. And then the cookware company's like, no, it's not quite what we wanted. So then they upload different cookware videos or cooking videos. It was laughable the way that profession was presented. So I'm just curious if that was a factor in your guys.
Scott?
Actually, I felt like they did an okay job with Kate and Jack in my movie. Kate's portrayed as a kind of generic morning show host on some big cable network. That comes across pretty well in the opening scene with her. Jack is her producer, so he's the guy in the booth, go to camera 2, stuff like that. They screw up in the opening act, and he accidentally leaves the camera running when it's going to credits, and her guest, who's all rah rah Christmas, let me give you an ornament, she kind of rebuffs him and accidentally pushes him into the Christmas tree and knocks it over, and it's caught on live television. So they both end up getting punished. The network boss is now you have an image issue. People are picketing the station. You're off to this Christmas town to rediscover your Christmas spirit, and you're going with her to make it happen, even though they both had separate vacation plans. And when they get there, they're doing pickups on the street. They're interviewing people. They find a little mystery that she begins to her journalism nose starts to twitch, and she goes off after the story. And I mean, as someone who's worked in the news, it seemed pretty legitimate. It tracked. Okay. It made sense. Nothing was there's no way this would happen. It looked very realistic enough that it didn't destroy my immersion in the film. So they did a pretty good job in mine of portraying her job. I'll say that.
Interesting. I'm jealous because it was laughable the way they presented it. Advertising isn't.
I don't know that my lead character had her profession, so to speak, didn't really play into it, because she's a maid at the beginning and then she gets fired, and that sets the whole plot in motion because Maximilian's butler witnesses her get canned, and then he goes over to her house where she is living with her brother and sister. She's the oldest sister. Their parents died, and she's been taking care of them for most of their life. So that's where he gets the idea that she could be Theodora's governess, and take care. And they just need someone to be the governess for a couple weeks or whatever.
Sure,
So and they're hard up for money. So it's a good opportunity for her to make some quick bank. So she goes to this castle. So her profession is more like just her experiences as a caretaker with her siblings.
Sure. Her governessing checks out.
Yeah. It doesn't, there's nothing about it that feels, it all tracks. Like it's not interesting, but it's fine. Like it all tracks.
There was one plot element in my movie that rubbed me the wrong way. Early on. And it's something that I've seen in other Christmas movies, and it always makes me crazy. I don't know why, but it's just something that really rubs me the wrong way. And it's one of the reasons why I hate the movie Christmas with the Cranks. I hate it. Mm-hmm. I think it's the worst Christmas movie. And it happened again in this movie. And I don't know if it happened in either of yours. I suspect it didn't, but I want to bring it up. Sure. Early in the movie, Kate, our main character, as I said, she rebuffs this guy who's trying to push a Christmas ornament on her. She accidentally pushes him into a Christmas tree. It's an accident. It's very much an accident. And it's very obvious that it's an accident. And she's not exactly grinchy. Like the movie went out of its way to make her not unlikable. So even though she's not into Christmas, she's got kind of like a secret dark bit of her past that makes it so that Christmas was kind of spoiled for her as a kid. So she's not super into it. So she has an excuse. She's not like vehemently against it. It's just not her thing. And she makes that pretty clear earlier on. Like, it's not that she hates Christmas. She just doesn't do Christmas. Because if she was really grinchy, she'd be unlikable. And obviously the movie doesn't want that. But the world around her reacts to her like she is a monster. Like, people lose their mind. There are literally people with signs picketing in front of the building. Her boss is concerned that she's gonna have to get let go because this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And I'm like, what am I the crazy person that this very reasonable excuse to not do Christmas is considered by the world at large to be her being the crazy person, when in fact the people picketing the building are objectively the crazy people? And again, it's why I don't like Christmas with the Cranks, because two people make a very reasonable decision to not do Christmas one year, and the world just loses their goddamn minds. How dare you, you monsters. And am I the one who's in the wrong here, guys? Like, I don't know anymore. I've seen it enough now that I don't know.
I think that's a fair assessment. It doesn't happen to mine. Everyone loves Christmas in Jingle Around the Clock, including, I was hoping Max, the lead, would be kind of grinchy and he has to come around, but he literally pretends to be working in one office, like tells the New York office he's working in Chicago, and tells Chicago he's working in New York, just so he can spend extra time with his mom in Chicago helping her run her craft fair. So he's Christmassy as hell. And the synopsis made me think maybe he wasn't. So no, that not a factor in mine.
Fair enough. Definitely a factor in mine. Again, Kate Harper has a very reasonable reason to not be super into Christmas, but isn't going to spoil it for anyone else. And the world around her treats her like she's some kind of pariah until she finds her Christmas spirit in this small town and falls in love with her ex-boyfriend. So that was definitely a factor in mine.
I feel like for mine, you could have actually taken Christmas out and the movie would play out the same. Like,
it's the King and I.
Yeah, that's right.
Sweet. Did yours have little musical stings whenever something like Christmassy was going to happen, or even?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So like, not only does the characters in Jingle Around the Clock have 3 meet cutes in a row, but some side characters have a meet cute. So the main characters, one of their meet cutes is literally bumping into each other.
Of course.
But naturally. Then later, the guy's sister and her friend also have a bit of a fling, like some side characters build a romance, and they gently bump shoulders while doing something together. Like, they bump into each other in the shoulder and the music goes diddly-ding. And it's like, Okay, literally, if you bump into, like, it's the joke of like, oh, I touched your hand, we have to get married now. Like, it's, yeah. So I get the impression you guys also had very ridiculous musical cues to tell you how to feel.
Yep.
We had a very on the nose, made for the movie song at the end that was both cringy and hilarious at the same time. Just like sort of like something that you would see in South Park where someone is singing exactly what's happening on screen. That's kind of how it felt.
Again, there's no time for subtlety.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
We also had about 3 meet cutes as well. Yeah, there's like one in the hotel, and when they first meet, then they have another run-in or 2 more run-ins at the castle before they actually start having any kind of dialogue.
Yeah, we don't have any meet cutes in mind because they already have a past. Jack and Kate were a thing in college. Then they both took different jobs, but then they ended up getting the same job on this morning show several years later, and now they're working together again, but it's very clear right off the cuff that Jack is still carrying a torch for her, but she's trying to keep things professional because she's focused on her career. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of the Christmas magic in Hollyvale, she rediscovers her feelings for him, and he's got big puppy dog eyes and is very handsome. So, yeah.
Cool. I had some questions also about things like conflict, but I think that's maybe better saved for the fixes, because that's definitely one of my fixes. So the last thing I sort of want to ask about comparing these review-wise, how do you feel the romance in the film you watched paid off? Like, was it genuine? Did you buy it? Was it earned? Like, or was it even shown? I got, yeah. You're both stroking your chin.
I think mine worked largely. Cause I think like at the top, I had mentioned that we kind of, got into it a little bit. And I think that's largely why, is because the romance plot was more or less working, and Danica McKellar and, the little girl who played, Theodora were cute together, and that plot was working, and it kind of drove, the romance well enough. So yeah, it was like one of those things where you just like, despite yourself, you're like, I hope these 2 kids make it, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it worked well enough in mine. Again, because Lori Loughlin and Colin Ferguson are both capable and had a little bit of chemistry together. I feel like it was a little rushed in the 3rd act, and I think that that's partly because my film, at the very least, had like too many subplots going on for the runtime. And I feel like that cut into the romance a little bit too much. But what we get is fine. Again, they have decent chemistry together, and I kind of buy it. And it maybe helps that they had previously established that they had a pre-existing relationship, so they didn't have quite as much of a journey to go on to get back together.
Interesting. The reason I asked this, in Jingle Around the Clock, they almost kiss once, and then they're interrupted by people coming into the room. When they almost kiss a second time, and then they're interrupted by people making an appearance. And then the 3rd kiss, the final kiss, is literally the last thing that happens in the movie. It's been building to this the whole time. They're finally going to smooch, and the actors put their faces within proximity of each other, and then the camera switches from being the close-up of the 2 faces to a crane shot looking down at them wearing winter coats in the park, holding each other and presumably kissing, and then zooms out. So, like, I don't want to sound like a teenage boy complaining about like an R-rated movie with boobs, but like you barely even see anything. Like they literally don't even kiss. Like they like, it's been building this whole time, and you don't see them have any kind of physical embrace to represent the like completely passable romance story that had led up to it. And maybe the reason this stood out to me is I watched a brilliant film recently called Dinner in America. It's this like punk movie from a couple years ago about this like, it starts off seeming like it's going to be like one of those like fuck you anti-authoritarian punk movies like Falling Down or whatever. Repo Man, what have you, but it is actually a romantic movie. It's a romantic comedy. And the two characters in Dinner in America, when they finally kiss, when they finally hook up, you don't see them have sex. We don't see them have any more sex than we do in the Hallmark movie. But you're like, I was viscerally excited for them to hook up. It felt like that, you know, that new romance thrill that you get when you like kiss someone for the first time. I felt that in the audience. I was so stoked for them to connect. I was there. I fully bought into this like burgeoning romance in a way that then made this even harder to swallow. Like it was
very sterile,
even more hollow after having just seen one of the most genuine depictions of romance I've ever seen on screen. It was, yeah. Or lust and excitement and enthusiasm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is a very chaste romance, which I suspect
chaste is the word.
Which is, I suspect, true for all the Hallmark movies. But I will say that that Kate and Jack do have a big old live on-air smooch at the end, on a big Santa Claus parade float, in front of the whole town. So the whole world gets to see her get her Christmas spirit back and fall in love with her man. So we do get a bit of a payoff there.
Well, good. It's lucky for you. I felt cuckolded by my movie. And I think with that, let's go into our fixes, shall we?
I'd like to get more reading done, and joining a book club seems like a good idea, but I don't know.
Why not?
Reading a whole book in a month, that's pretty daunting.
What if it was just a chapter, say a week?
That doesn't sound too bad. Still, getting together with a bunch of people, that's a whole evening.
Well, what if it was only half an hour, whenever you wanted to?
That would be great.
The Read Along, a mini book club for your ears.
Join my wife, Anita,
and my husband, Scott,
as we take you on a journey through a good book,
one chapter at a time. Available right now on your podcatcher of choice.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We are fixing Crown for Christmas. Every Christmas has a story, and Jingle Around the Clock. Or, moreover, our goal today is to fix the Hallmark Christmas movie formula. Greg, Scott, any notes to kick us off that maybe will apply to the other movies?
I think one of the big things right off the top is that all three movies needed more time in the oven to get baked. I think we all agree that they're all kind of like clearly hastily written and maybe needed a couple more passes to punch up that dialogue, to maybe stretch out some things or tighten things up here and there. There was at one point in my movie, I didn't mention this in the last half, there was one point in my movie where Kate apologizes to Jack about something that happened allegedly the night before, and it stopped the movie dead for Anita and I. We had to scroll back because we thought we'd missed something. And it was just, no, whoa, she's referencing something that didn't happen in the movie, something that either was cut or was never added in the first place. And it's like that's just sloppy script writing. And I think that it needed more work.
Wild, because that the same thing happened to us. I can't believe it. We were watching it, and then like one scene goes to the next scene, and we're like, how are these connected? And we rewound it to be like, no, we're not missing anything. It's just like you said, sloppy writing. Yeah. Where, long story short, they're trying to figure out they both have an idea for the ad campaign, and they're going to figure out whose is better. And she goes, you want to bet? And he goes, okay. And you're like, okay, they're going to somehow put their theories to the test. See if her theory works better on a small scale than his theory works better, what have you. And then the next scene, they're like, whichever one of us wins a wreath making contest, we'll do their premise for the ad campaign. And we're like, wait, what does that have to do with the ad campaign? And we went back and we're like, oh, nothing. It's just time to make wreaths. So.
It's such a non sequitur that it pulled you right out of the movie.
Yeah.
We haven't had something very Christmassy in this scene yet. So to manufacture a reason to feature something of the Christmas variety. I think, to me, the biggest problem. I want to say, actually, maybe I'll go back for a second.
You mentioned I have thoughts on dialogue and punch up.
Yeah. You mentioned that the scripts are half baked, and I have a feeling that that's more or less by design. like if there's any movie that or set of movies that will eventually be written by AI, these are probably it. Because it is a mass production of movies, and it's wild to me that Hallmark feels like they have to make so many of them. It's very strange because, like, when you look at the pantheon of Hallmark films and you see all the titles and the poster art and stuff like that, like everything is so generic that you could hardly tell one movie from another.
Yeah.
Like if I was like,
why make so many?
Yeah. I don't know if that, I wonder what kind of effect that has on the audience who's watching it. Like, do they have, I don't even know, do they have a streaming service? Like, do you have like a Hallmark Netflix that you're flicking through, or are they just
there's definitely a Hallmark channel, but I think there is also a Hallmark streaming service that, the same way there's Shudder or Crunchyroll.
Right.
There's the Hallmark streaming, if not whole app, then like extension of Prime or whatever.
Yeah, because I just wonder what that experience is like, because like when you're trying to decide what to watch on Netflix, like there's so many different things and you have to kind of decide what you're in the mood for. But if you're doing the same thing in a wall of Hallmark movies, it's like, would it just be like selecting, russet potatoes versus yellow gold potatoes? So there's nothing different between them. Like, I don't know, like it would just be, it seems like that to me would feel like a very strange, surreal experience.
I have to wonder if you could take someone who legitimately would quantify themselves as a fan of Hallmark Christmas movies and put them in front of a wall with like video cassette boxes of like a dozen of the movies, but without the titles on them, and ask them to tell you which movie those were. I wonder if, and again, a self-professed fan of these movies would be able to tell you what those titles were. Because all of the, like, look on Letterboxd, look on IMDb, all of the posters look the same. All of the actors are very similar. All of the premises are basically just set dressing for the exact same story or something close to. I legit don't know that someone who legitimately liked these movies would be able to tell one apart from the other.
I think it doesn't matter, because trying to pick which one of these to watch, it reminded me of when I worked at Chapters Indigo and going through the romance section and seeing the same like JJ Roberts or JD Roberts book or Nora Roberts, that's her name. The same Nora Roberts book a new one every quarter, a couple of them every year that are literally the same thing. That's Harlequin Romance's MO. Those are published. I don't know if people know Harlequin Romance books technically aren't books. They're magazines. They come out monthly, and last month's issue gets destroyed the way magazines get destroyed, and a new one comes. But instead of like a new issue of the Atlantic, well, we don't want last month's Atlantic because that's old news. So we destroy it. Here's the one with the current news. But you're literally just being like, that was November, hunky stable boy, weds the milkmaiden. This is December's hunky stable boy weds the milkmaiden. Like, it's deranged, but the people who have an appetite for it are like, I want the same thing every time. Serve them up to me. This is my one,
it's
new one a
the
month.
Big Mac of romance.
Yeah.
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 The closest I can think that I would fall for would be like a podcast where like I've been listening to Comedy Bang Bang for years. There's a bit of a formula. There's a bit of a structure. That's what I want in an episode of Comedy Bang Bang, or I have some notes, right?
Yeah. I think, obviously these movies aren't made for us at all.
Sure.
They're, but they do have a very clear audience, and, they serve their purpose for the people who are watching them, whether they're putting them on as background noise or it's a nice comfort watch or whatever the case may be. So at least I can definitely appreciate them on that level. It's just I guess my only criticism of Hallmark is like, maybe instead of making 100 of them a year make like 80. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like give each one a little bit more budget and a little bit more time for your writers to come up with something interesting rather than just like spewing them out at a breakneck pace.
Quality versus quantity might
exactly.
actually serve to improve.
Yeah, because given how similar they are to it, like you think like why it shouldn't matter. Like you should like no one's really going to notice if there's a few less a year.
But also, this is a multi-billion-dollar company who clearly know their formula. And if they know what works in these movies, they must know what the demand is and therefore produce to the demand, right? Like, if they're like, we can sell 80 of these movies a year, they're going to make 80 of them. Like, I can't imagine they're making more than they need because most businesses don't tend to make a surplus. Like, they try to have supply match demand. That's like basic free market capitalism. So I'm like, they must be producing at maximum supply demand ratio. Like,
I guess
there must be a demand for this.
I guess they're selling them to other streamers, right? So, I mean, maybe that's part of the model. It almost feels like, I'm sure both of you are familiar with the traffic concept of induced demand. Like it feels almost like that, where it's just like they've created this situation where they've made all these movies, and then the demand for more movies at the same pace is coming from either their buyers or the audience, right? Whereas if they hadn't ever made that many movies a year to begin with, it may never have been necessary in the first place. I don't know.
It's possible.
Yeah.
If we can go, I got back. I love that insight though, Greg. I'm glad we talked about the economics of it because it is a bizarre, like, I mean, at least Marvel movies, like everybody sees them, you know what I mean? Like they, and also they're running out of steam, whereas this industry is never going anywhere. But yeah, a wild business model. But back to fixes. Before that, we were talking about the dialogue needing punch up.
Yep.
I have some pitches on how I think that would work for most of these.
Sure.
I found a lot of the dialogue in my film, Jingle Around the Clock, was a lot of telling, not showing. And I understand, like, no subtlety. We've said it a bunch of times. There's no subtlety. So I understand not having any kind of metaphor or symbolism in a film like this, like subtextual subtlety. But I think there is room for just regular textual subtlety. And I think you can trust the audience to pick up on ideas without being told things explicitly. For example, from the film I watched, there's a scene where someone right early on goes, "Fiona, as in your boss, Fiona?" When it would have been much better to just have Fiona show up and do something only a boss could do. And we learn Fiona's the boss through her actions, not someone saying, "As in your boss, Fiona?" And then another example would be like, "I don't have time for a Christmas romance, let alone trying to get this promotion." And you could just be like, have her looking at a happy couple doing Christmas stuff and say, "Oh, who has time for that?" before her daydream is broken by someone who wants her attention for a work matter, like a boss coming in to do boss stuff. And like I said off the top, I think it is a deliberate clarity to make sure it's accessible for everyone. I understand that's probably the reason. But I also feel like if your target demographic is people who are just happy to see twinkle lights and snowflakes in a movie they watch in December, then they won't notice a little like fiction writing 101 flair mercifully thrown in for those of us who happen to get roped into watching it with grandma.
It's like when you're doing SpongeBob SquarePants and there's some jokes for the adults. Yeah.
Like give me a Bluey situation where like there's stuff for me and there's stuff for the kids, but in this case the kids are just like tasteless boomers. So I don't think it needs to be this dumb was my fix, and add a little of that subtlety back into just the text. Doesn't have to be into the subtext, dramatic irony, symbolism, metaphor, but into the text, please.
One issue with my film was that they tried to cram a little too much into too small of a package, because it's got a kind of a made-for-TV runtime. I want to say it's like maybe an hour and a half, and there's like 3 too many subplots running through it. And I actually felt that took away from the more interesting stuff, because time was being devoted to stuff that wasn't the interesting stuff. And I think that that's also a process of just like, this needed to be tightened up. It needed to be rewritten a couple times so that we dropped the stuff that wasn't super important, that we didn't. And again, it ties back to what you were saying, because there's stuff that happens on screen that maybe could have been implied, and we wouldn't have missed it. And we wouldn't have like what didn't need to be right there in front of us. Like, she has the situation with her dad. That's the reason why Christmas was kind of spoiled for her. And then and then her dad has been sending her letters every year. But then in the third act, her dad has to show up in the small town to reconcile with her. And it's like, why? We didn't need that part. She could have given him a phone call. Like, and her having her dad there now is taking away from her romance with Jack. Like, it's pulling focus away from that. It's pulling focus away from the little mystery that's going on in the town, which was kind of the interesting thing with the story. And it was just a subplot that it was a darling that could have been left on the cutting room floor and should have been, frankly. So yeah, again, stuff that just like a couple more passes on the script would have fixed.
I think you're right. Mine had maybe in thinking about it with that note in mind, I think mine had too many, because the lead character in Jingle Around the Clock was trying to plan a party for her friends, get a promotion, and have a Christmas romance. And
she's trying to Liz Lemon it. She wants it all.
She's trying to Liz Lemon it. And I think we spend too much time on maybe the party planning thing. Like, maybe the conflict isn't that she's trying to plan the party. It's just that, like, she's going to have it, because the party conflict is twofold in this film. One, she doesn't have time to plan it, even though all her friends are offering to help. Literally, it's going to be in a cafe that her friend owns. The friend already decorated it, and she's like, yeah, but we need a little more decorations. And the friend goes, okay, sure, if you want. And then she's like, I won't have time to decorate. So the friend decorates her cafe twice just because she decided. So I think, so yeah, the conflict is twofold. One, she doesn't have time, and then also that it ends up falling on a day. The party is going to happen on the same day as her interview for the big promotion, and she might not make one or the other and kind of has to choose. I'm like, well, there's the conflict with the party. We don't need this timing. We don't have enough time to plan a party that someone's already taken care of subplot. I think you're right.
I think, given the economics, as we've discussed, of these movies and the time that writers have to write these movies, I feel like I'm going to take this from more of like attacking the philosophy of Hallmark movies, in the sense that there seems to be an effort not to like make anything too upsetting or add too much conflict. In Crown for Christmas, they introduce this idea that, like, Danica McKellar has been raising her siblings herself and obviously has absent parents, which marries well with Theodora, the little girl whose mother passed away, right? And you would think that they would have some kind of discussion with each other over this. They don't. There's there's no like, there's some conflict between them at the beginning just because she's kind of like a little rascal. But that's it. It has nothing to do with her missing her mother or whatever. She is just like kind of a bratty kid who then suddenly realized, like, oh, this person's pretty cool, so I'm gonna hang out with my nanny and have a good time. And that's unfortunate, because you could really add a lot of emotional weight by simply having things like, towards the end, Danica McKellar is going to leave the castle because Max is supposed to propose to some other royal. So she decides that like, well, now is the time for me to leave. And that's the perfect time to introduce this a sort of like abandonment, or whatever you want to call it, issue for Theodora, who feels like, here's this person who's come in and been a very good motherly figure. And now she's leaving just the way that my mom left. Right.
Yeah.
And I understand that they don't necessarily want to remind people of death,
of dead members.
in their Christmas movies. But the thing is like adding that kind of stuff is what makes the romance more cathartic.
Yeah. It also what makes a story
for sure. But like even adding those small little things like Theodora feeling abandoned, or the father having a hard time raising his kids because he's heartbroken or whatever. Adding even those little flourishes that don't really necessarily make it a great movie, but if all you're trying to do is give people a little bit of a emotional punch during the Christmas season, I would say go for it. People can handle death. I mean, if you're going to broach it anyway, you might as well go
just
straight into it.
The most famous and I would say probably arguably popular Christmas story of all time opens with someone dying.
Yeah.
Marley was dead as a doornail.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the fact that he's going to kill himself in It's a Wonderful Life.
No, I was. It's definitely A Christmas Carol.
Yeah. That is the most popular.
It starts with a dead guy, and then a man is haunted by literal ghosts, and the vision of his joyless future death. That is the quintessential Christmas story.
Yeah.
And you're right. Even if you want to look at It's a Wonderful Life, a man decides that he'd be better off killing himself.
Yeah.
Death is tied up in these stories. Don't be afraid to do that.
I mean, conflict is tied to stories, and I'm glad you brought this up, Greg, because something similar happens in Jingle Around the Clock. I won't go into the details, but like he thinks she's maybe got the hots for some other guy, but she doesn't. And then she thinks he stole her advertising idea, but he didn't. And it reminded me of a quote from Neil Gaiman, who, I don't know if you guys follow news. We don't love Neil Gaiman anymore, unfortunately.
I did not hear about
been
that.
Canceled. Yeah, it's a drag, but he's a sex pest like they all are. Allegedly. But nonetheless, it reminded me of a quote from Neil Gaiman that I was able to find and I'd love to share with you, because I think this applies to all the Hallmark movies as well. Have you ever had to watch the Disney Channel and the kind of plots they deem acceptable on that channel? Let me give you an example. Somebody thinks that everybody's forgotten their birthday, but they haven't because they were planning a surprise party all along. And everybody loves everybody, and then they hug. It's almost like pornography. It presents a vision of an impossibly hospitable world that children know doesn't exist.
Yeah. Because, and this is something we kind of discussed earlier, is all of these, and it was in your plot summary, all of these movies have conflicts, but they're not really. It's all little misunderstandings or things that are very easily overcome by a loving and supportive little town or village around the main character. Every obstacle that comes up is either just like immediately dealt with in a perfectly hospitable way, or wasn't a conflict to begin with. It was just a crazy misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And that's certainly the case in my movie. That's generally the case, I think, in your guys' movies as well.
It's not even conflict, it's friction.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
It's all it's all barely an inconvenience.
And I suppose when we started out this little project, that maybe it was predictable that that's kind of the conclusions we would come to. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like you could give your writers and filmmakers like a little bit more leeway if I'm right and they are in fact reining them in terms of like the types of conflict that they'll let them feature in their movies, right? I could be wrong. I could that just might be, they might have just found writers who just don't want to do that. I don't know.
Well, and
based on that podcast I heard recently, it's people who know the formula and are working towards it, right? Like it's you know, something like Uncharted is low risk and safe. This is zero risk and zero safe, 100% safe. Yeah.
I will say this though. Yes, there's something about having a feel-good movie that's just feel-good all the time, but that makes it very flat emotionally. In order for the way a good rom-com works, because the characters have like that second act falling out. They hit a nadir before they go back up to the apex. The highs feel higher because the characters have had lows. And that's true with good Christmas stories too. A lot of the good Christmas rom-coms and a lot of the good Christmas movies have characters who have to like tumble down and hit their lowest point spiritually and emotionally. And when I say spiritually, I mean like Christmas spirit, before they can find it again and get it built back up. So having some actual conflict, having some actual more than just like a little bit of friction means that when we get to that climactic final smoochy smooch on live television, it's going to be so much better. That because the whole movie's just been like one kind of flat emotion just kind of washing over you instead about letting you get invested and feel bad for these people and then feel joy at them getting together. Yeah, it's a missed opportunity. It is. It's super safe, but by making it super safe, you're not giving the audience a fun catharsis. You're just giving them a warm glow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want John McClane and his wife hugging and kissing through the whole movie. You want John McClane picking the glass out of his feet before he can make up with his wife, right?
Yeah.
He's got to experience that low.
Yeah, it's Merry Christmas, right. Shitter's full, not Merry Christmas, shitter is working as intended.
Exactly. Make your characters earn that happy ending, but then by earning it, the audience will be more invested. They'll want them to have earned it. They'll be happy that they earned it. And
have felt anything in your art.
and in these movies, like I didn't really feel anything throughout. Like, they were handsome and cute, and I was happy they had a smooch on live TV. But it would have been a better smooch on live TV if there had been some actual conflict.
Yeah. I love how I can segue this. Let's say that notes taken, but you know what? Mr. Hallmark says, I'm sorry, guys, but conflict is off the table.
Douglas Hallmark the third. Thank you.
Yeah. I still have a pitch to make these more interesting without necessarily improving the conflict or improving the dialogue.
Okay.
In Jingle Around the Clock, there is a scene where Max's mom is like, yeah, we have a sleigh. Everyone loves the sleigh in the neighborhood. My book club comes and takes pictures with it, and it's just one of the most popular Christmas things around. We've got a sleigh. And all the characters are loading big fake-looking presents into the sleigh. And then the scene moves on to non-sleigh related activities. And I know there's a budget. We were talking about that earlier, a limited budget. But doing anything interesting, like in improv, we call it tasking, where like we're talking about, you know, dad's funeral, but I'm chopping onions and you're mopping, and like it just gives some depth to like the conversation as you do an activity that is maybe unrelated. Just makes it interesting. So it's not two people standing on stage talking. So I'm thinking about this sleigh in my movie. There could have just been a scene, one of the scenes where they would otherwise have been talking on the sleigh. They had the sleigh. And like, I get you probably can't afford to have like a whole scene where you watch them whip away on horse-drawn carriage, but like you shoot a shot of horses getting hitched to it. And then you do shot, reverse shot conversation of them sitting in the sleigh, and a grip is pulling it past some Christmassy background. So at least this like boring conflict-free, lazy dialogue scene at least has like moving pictures in it. Like it's something interesting is happening. And again, it doesn't have to be a big action set piece. It can just be something as simple as like this scene takes place on a sleigh. I mean, I guess slight to their credit, there is a scene that takes place on an ice rink where they're talking while they skate. But like, that's about as interesting as it gets, is like, in this scene, they're skating. But otherwise, it's a lot of talking next to a Christmas tree, and it's like, have them doing something interesting while they have these lame ass conversations. Is that something you guys noticed with yours, or was your guys riddled with action, riding sandworms and shit?
No. Yeah, it was, it was more or less like that. Like a lot of very, TV, late 1980s, 1990s TV directing, you know, where there's not much to it. It's just getting the scene shot, cut, print, away you go.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yep.
Feature, not a bug. Great. Well, I think we've, clearly Hallmark knows what they're doing. They're making 80 of these a minute. So maybe they don't need our notes, but I'd like to think if someone were going to take the baton of this formula and try to figure out what does it look like in a bold new future, perhaps some of what we've said here could make these movies less of a dud and more of a just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a little improvement, that's for sure.
Yeah. We also had some listener comments. We asked our listeners if they'd seen a Hallmark movie or just any, inoffensive holiday rom-com with attractive white people. Or it's mostly white people. Yeah. There are ones that don't feature white people, but by and large, it's all white people, to the point where the ones that don't feature white people, it feels like this one isn't about white. Like the twist is it's not about white people. Like there was one I saw that was like #Xmas, and it was very like hip Gen Z social media holiday rom-com. Or there was one that was like a Hanukkah one, but also the same formula. And yeah, if it's just like, hey, we did one with a queer couple or a black couple, it's like, it seems bad to me that it's like the twist is a different group. Seems very tokeny. Anyway. Bit of a tangent there. Sorry, we're going on the listener comments. Thank you to everyone who commented on this about the films they have seen, Hallmark or otherwise. Over in our Discord, comments from Bogo Load says lots of fun Hallmark ones, although my favorite thing in that vein was the Letters to Santa Claus parody / spoof movie that was just really spot on nailing exactly those bits that pop up in so many Hallmark Christmas movies. Yeah, it's interesting that this is such a well-trotted formula that like the most interesting thing you can do with it is to parody or spoof it. That sort of is the death knell for any kind of genre or trope or convention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when you know the trend is over.
Yeah.
Is when Weird Al gets his hands on it.
Yeah.
Or just, like Scary Movie or anything. I mean, heck, if you would like my sketch group, The Debutants, friend of the podcast, Robin Slack, is a part of that as well. In winter 2022, I want to say, we did a bunch of short, quote unquote, parodies of Hallmark movies where sort of the game was like really weird overwritten dialogue. And there's, I think it's probably 12 of them between the 6 debutantes. So if you go to, look up The Debutantes on YouTube, we have a lot of fun, spoofing this in our own special way. So, the spoofs of this really are the best thing to come out of it.
Well,
I'll just throw a link to that in the show notes or something.
When you create 100 movies that all stick to a very obvious formula, that formula is ripe for the picking, right? That's almost low hanging fruit at that point. And that's not to say that the spoofs are doing an easy thing, just that like you've set yourself up at that point, right?
Yeah.
Friend and partner to one member of the show, Aaron, said one of the reasons I like Hallmark type movies is the world building is insane. One we watched before was about a woman managing a store that was open all year round that sold exclusively Santa hats. And if I remember properly, it was treated that this was the town's biggest draw. Like if the hat store had shut down, it would have been like the auto industry dying in Detroit. That ties back to what I was saying before about this woman live on air having the mildest grievance about Christmas and the world losing their minds over it. Like, this was the worst thing to happen.
Intra 86 says, that reminds me of Christian Mingle the movie. Brackets, yes, it exists. There's a scene in a restaurant called Steaks and Cakes, and you'll never guess the only 2 entrees they serve. Greg, you've seen this Christian Mingle the movie?
Yes, I have. It was one of the bad movie night movies we watched. I don't remember anything about it. As bad movie night goes, I think that one was a bit of a miss.
Bummer. Thank you to everyone who commented. Please consider joining our Discord server if you want to get in on the conversation. It's where we like to solicit the listener comments as well as on our social medias, but there's always a good conversation happening there. You can get the link at ihavesomenotes.com or on any of our socials. Please come join our Discord. This has been the Hallmark movie. We did it, gang. We can finally stop considering this every December and then backing away.
I don't know. I was going to say that every December we could just pick 3 new Hallmark movies and compare them.
Oh God, no.
I mean, I guess how we would, because we went out of our way to pick Hallmark TM movies. If we did this again, I would then want to do the C list. If these are B rom-coms, I want the C rom-coms. I want
the knockoff Hallmark movies.
The knockoff Hallmark movies, which are already just knockoffs of formulaic Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
So
we'll visit the Netflix holiday canon.
Then go to the Netflix catalog of these. Or I don't know, just watch Christmas with the Cranks.
Oh no, guys. So bad. So bad. Probably fixable, though. I'll grant that. At any rate, you can, of course, follow us as we wrap up the 2024 holiday season over on assorted social medias. You can find us on facebook.com/IHaveSomeNotes. We are at IHaveSomeNotes on Blue Sky. You can also hit us up, as Liam said before, on our Discord server. That's where things are always popping off. We've got lots of great conversation going on there. We've got a thriving little community that's been building, and we'd love for you to come join and be part of it. And also be sure to like and subscribe to us on your podcatcher of choice, because that definitely helps us out as well.
And if you want to help us out even more, come on over to the Patreon. We appreciate all of our monthly Patreon subscribers. There is a bunch of great bonus content. I Have Some Recs, our recommendation podcast, a special report from the International Film Festival from yours truly, and some other cool goodies from previous seasons. Periodically, bonus content dropping there. And we also just appreciate your support. So you can head over to patreon.com/IHaveSomeNotes to check out that material and help us out along the way. Thank you to all of the current patrons.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll be back, of course, in 2 weeks with we're going to take on the much maligned, or the last voyage of Demeter, which is Dracula on in 17th century schooner. So a bottle movie that just might be right up my alley. I may be the only one defending it. So we'll see you then.
Yeah, I hope they kiss at the end.
Yeah.
Like, build up to it. Make a good payoff.
Like the main characters or the Dracula in the ship?
Yes.
Yes.
Until then, I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.
And happy holidays.